Hello and welcome to Philosophy Roulette 196, where I read and review philosophy papers live, and you get to hear my first take reactions. I had a request recently by one of my viewers, and I'm sorry if he doesn't catch it today. I'm going to probably do some more tomorrow too, but he asked for some, let me go look at some continental philosophy, because I don't normally get to do that. I don't know, well, I would read more, but it's just not usually on the front page of Phil papers, is what it is. So, he wanted me to take a look at something on Deleuze. I said, yeah, sure, I'll go read something on Deleuze. Why not? I mean, I've talked about Husserl, but let's go see if Deleuze is here. I don't remember if he has his own section. Oh, yes, he does. Oh, no, that's Derrida. Sorry, misclick. Jacques Derrida. But he was asking for, I think, some Deleuze. So, I'm going to go try to read some Deleuze. I don't happen to know much about Deleuze, but we'll see what we have. Actually, you know what might be the most convenient thing to do, because we'll see if there's anything here, first of all. Yeah, because, well, let's see. Let's go see if this is here. It's got to get my search going for, okay, 1 of 16, so it looks like there's a bunch of things. Journal of Speculative Philosophy, let's try this one. See when it's from 2020. Oh boy, is it available? Let's find out. Every so often I get lucky and it is available, even though it doesn't say it is. No, $20 to read this article. I don't think so. That is very disappointing. I was like so excited. The first thing, I was like, oh my god, I might actually have something on the first thing. What's up, Omnarly? How you doing? There's going to be even more big words than Aristotle's stream. I love his stream, but like he is way too like popular and doing like cool things compared to me. I'm just like, I'm gonna read some academic philosophy right now. That's kind of how I do it. So see what else we got. And I did have a request for this. Let's see. Post-human perspectives on the self in Sophia. Let's see what we got here. Yes, I'm going to be reading out loud. I'm going to read and review a paper. I do that sometimes. Sometimes I play Minesweeper and just bullshit. Oh yeah, if you want to chat, like you ask me questions, you ask away. It's cool. I'm just trying to figure stuff out. It's sort of like a reaction video I make of all this stuff. That's assuming I can find anything, of course, to read. Yeah. So yeah, I try to keep up with chat. But let's see, alright. Notes from a crisis, that could be cool. People have to upload their stuff to Phil papers, though. So yeah. Philosophy Today. Do not have access. This document cannot be purchased. Is this available? Maybe it is. Huh. Access requires a subscription or membership, so I can't read that one. Yeah, so what happens is I basically read stuff and then feel free to let me know what you think as I'm going. And if you have questions, I try to do it. Okay, so we got an e-print of this one. What's up, Semiotics? How are you tonight? I got a request for some Deleuze, and so I'm not really a Deleuze person, but hey, whatever. I'm going to read it and do it. Alright, so let's see. This is just a reference. I don't even have access. Oh, jeez. Come on, people. Don't have access to this, so go on to the next one. What I might do in a half second is they don't Vedānta on attributes at Acosmism. Oh my god, comparative and continental philosophy. All right, now we're going into like all sorts of stuff. So let's see if we have. I've never heard of this journal, but this is like gonna be interesting. Hey, got the PDF right here. Let's see what it looks like. Brilliant. So this is what I'm gonna read. Māyā and Becoming, Deleuze and Vedānta on attributes, Acosmism, and Parallelism in Spinoza. Not what I was expecting to read, but hey, this is what it's going to be, because this is the first thing that was available, and that's why it's roulette. We want to win, but we need to lose. Yeah. Alright, so For those live, here's the link, and you can always type !paper, and the link will pop back up in the chat. So, let me download this. Hit the download button, and we will see what this is. I mean, it's not like I can go anywhere yet. I'm still in New York. I just can't even go anywhere. So we're reading philosophy at night and seeing what happens. I'm gonna probably do some more Deleuze, and he also asked for a Baudrillard. So I do take requests. So if anyone wants requests, I do take requests. All right. So attributes. Okay, here we go. And I apologize for how I read all these things. I am not good at words and things like that. But here we go. There we go. So here's our article from Comparative and Continental Philosophy. Interpreting historical thinkers often brings with it concerns and preconceptions of those engaged in the reading. Yes, it does. I have lots of ideas. None of them usually make any difference or any sense. As such, in considering the views of later interpreters of a philosopher or a philosophy, we can sometimes learn just as much about the views of those doing the interpreting as we can about the correct way of reading the original philosopher. A good example of this appears in contemporary readings of Baroque Spinoza. In this paper, I look at Spinoza through the eyes of Gil Deleuze and Ramakanta Tripathi. Their interpretations of Spinoza help illuminate some of the concerns and presuppositions in their own thought and help us further understand their own philosophical positions. In the first case, Deleuze's reading of Spinoza provides insight into ideas such as the concept of expression that ultimately constitute his own metaphysics. For Tripathi, a scholar of Vedanta, we can gain further appreciation of the concept of transcendence and most particularly of the idea of Māyā, cosmic nescience, which forms the cornerstone of Vedantic thought. In this paper, I will compare these two readings of Spinoza with a particular focus on three features of Spinoza's philosophy: the relationship between substance and attribute, the problem of acosmism, and the problem of parallelism of attributes. Deleuze and Tripathi's understandings of these three issues in Spinoza's thought illustrate for us their concerns with becoming and expression and Māyā, respectively. Okay, and like I said, please feel free to ask questions, but this is well outside my anything I have any background in, so I'm doing the best I can. Attributes. In Spinoza's thought, there are three levels of reality: substance, attribute, and mode. Substance is unified, but it is articulated in attributes, which are potentially infinite in number, though we are only aware of the attributes of thought and extension. These attributes are then further articulated as modes, or as the concrete things, physical or mental, that we encounter in the world. The first contrast between Tripathi's Vedantic reading and Deleuze's reading of Spinoza concerns the relationship between the attributes and substance and the nature of the attributes and substance themselves. Is this map is not the territory stuff? Yeah, I'm not sure what that means, but this is not. This is we're well off my map. I have no idea where I am, but we're reading it. The first contrast between Tripathi's Vedantic reading and Deleuze's reading of Spinoza concerns the relationship between attributes and substance and the nature of the attributes and substance themselves. That is, Tripathi and Deleuze disagree about exactly how we ought to describe substance's articulation or expression as attributes. On the one hand, Deleuze puts forward a view based on his well-known idea of expression and argues that substance is entirely immanent and not at all transcendent. On the other hand, Tripathi sees Spinozism as an absolutism and suggests that substance is both immanent and transcendent. We should therefore only hold substance as real, and we should treat attributes as ascriptions only. These conflicting views reflect very different overall concerns. The first wants to place emphasis on the idea of becoming, and the second on the transcendental nature of the absolute, and on our ignorance in being unable to perceive it due to Māyā. Alright, so there's a big difference here. I suppose it'll get mapped out a bit more going forward, but it's the immanent versus non-immanent reading. So immanent usually means it's self-contained, and then transcendent, of course, is going beyond itself into something else. And so we can't usually get at the transcendental nature, the thing in itself, because that's somehow beyond us. But the immanent analysis is always self-contained in that we have access to, because it's within the concept to begin with. So, Continuing. Deleuze. In Deleuze's view, substance expresses itself in the attributes, and it remains involved in what expresses it, imprinted in what unfolds it, immanent in whatever manifests it. Expression is in this respect an involvement. In other words, we cannot easily distinguish between what manifests and what is manifested. According to Deleuze, expression in general involves and implicates what it expresses while also implicating and evolving it. If substance expresses itself in attributes, then it is fully implicated in it. That is, there is no transcendence of substance. What is expressed has no existence outside its expressions. Each expression is, as it were, the existence of what is expressed. We might say, therefore, the attributes such as thought and extinction are what constitute the nature of substance. It is difficult to see substance as anything beyond its expressions as attribute. It is therefore the essence of substance itself that is expressed in the attributes. Okay, so very simply, it's things don't have reality outside of how they express themselves. So basically, things are their attributes, and so it is in some sense how it is attributed to us. How it attributes itself to us is what it is, and so there's nothing more than the beyond its expression as attribute. The same process occurs in the relationship sugar attributes are sugar or sweet and white. Well, no. See, this is exactly what Deleuze is saying is not the case. It's saying that sugar is the attribute of sweet and white and all the other ones. But like the sugar is sugar in some sense is I mean, that would be a logical truth maybe, but we only know sugar through its attributes, and that in some sense is all it is. There is no like sugar itself. The same process occurs in the relationship between attribute and mode. Mode is an expression of an attribute, as an attribute is expression of substance. As with the step from substance to attribute, attributes are fully implicated in the modes and cannot be understood as separate from them. Let me tell you something. I'm gnarly. I find this stuff hard too because some of it's kind of radical. It's cool though. All right, so Miguel de Bestegui describes this as follows. The first step is qualitative expression through which substance renders itself determinate in certain infinite forms. The second is quantitative expression through which these forms express themselves in turn through the production of particular modes. Expression comprises both determination and differentiation. Through the notion of expression, which involves and implicates what it expresses, Deleuze can maintain that substance, attribute, and mode are all of equal status. There is no reason to privilege one or the other as more important, as they are inseparable. Accordingly, substance is not transcendent. It does not exist over and above its qualitative expression as attributes, or ultimately its quantitative expression as modes. We can see then the central role that becoming plays in this interpretation. As attributes are the expressions of substance in which the substance is fully implicated, substance only finds existence in this expression. Yeah. Okay, yeah, cool. Thanks, Gnarly. Well, see, here's the thing. This is what we're doing here. So these are sort of like three different ways of talking about the something. So you've got the sugar, which is the substance, and then the attributes, which is like sweet and white, and then you have that's the qualities of it, and then you've got the quantities. You could like measure how sweet or how white sugar would be. But these are sort of, you need to you only understand sugar through exactly these sorts of qualitative things of being sweet and the colored, and then you also can then do the quantitative things of how sweet and how white or like off-white sugar actually is. And so that's sort of and that's everything there is to being sugar, and so that's why the role of becoming the sugar is like it only exists through the ways it can become like sweet or white and that sort of thing. There's nothing beyond that. Okay, moving on to Tripathi. Tripathi's Vedantic interpretation of Spinoza argues, contrary to Deleuze's view, that we should privilege one level, substance, over the others. Understood as fully implicated expression as Deleuze... That's right, expression as Deleuze does, we cannot possibly say that substance is more important than attribute. We cannot possibly say, as Deleuze does, we cannot possibly say that substance is more important than attribute, as substance only exists through its expression as attribute. Conversely, we cannot say that attributes are more important than substance, as attributes are as attributes are they expressions of substance and are nothing but this. For Tripathi, however, we must approach our understanding of the attributes with a fixed notion of substance as unique and absolutely indeterminate pure being. Tripathi views Spinoza, therefore, as an absolutist philosopher, one who proposes a system of philosophy in which the reality of the absolute is affirmed and that of the relative is denied. For substance to be unique and pure, it must have some kind of transcendence from attribute and mode, even if it is also in some sense immanent in them as well. Tripathi does not deny, therefore, that substance is immanent, but also he insists that we emphasize the transcendence of substance as much as we note the immanence of substance in attributes. According to Tripathi, the transcendence of God does not mean that he is external to the world or separate from it. He is all-pervasive. In Spinoza's philosophy, God transcends the world in the same sense in which space transcends the objects in it, and also pervades the universe in the same sense in which space pervades objects. The notion of immanence and transcendence are not exclusive of each other. It is indeterminate and unrelated. Substance is transcendent, but as the ground of everything, it is immanent. That's a nice metaphor. Like, if you call like God as like space, like it's not outside of space, but in some sense you need the space to have stuff in it. Now, of course, you can still have relative space, but that's I could also discuss that. But this notion of space and sort of the absolute space that just substance moves through is a nice way to think about stuff. The world-affirming expressions of Spinoza should not be taken literally, he claims. Typically, Spinoza is interpreted as pantheistic or monistic rather than absolutist. So, on the one hand, God is the immanent and not the transient cause of things, because there is nothing outside him. He is not only the efficient affecting cause of the existence of things, but also of their essence. He is both the material and the efficient cause. All that is possible is actual because there's nothing to prevent God from creating. Nothing is contingent. Nothing is contingent. Things could not have been produced in any other manner or order than in which they were produced. However, on the other hand, Tripathi sees Spinoza in emphasizing substance as regarding the empirical world as the world of opinion and imagination, and substance as being ultimately indeterminate. For instance, Spinoza asserts that we can form no general idea of God's essence. God, or substance, pervades the universe and is yet beyond it. Substance cannot be said to be outside the universe, and yet being absolutely indeterminate is also not identical with it. Hence, we should recognize too that while substance is immanent in the world, it also transcends it at the same time through its absolute infinity and indeterminacy. As such, we should consider substance as both immanent and transcendent. So I guess maybe space is the wrong way to say it, but like aether, like the ether that like sort of like pervades the universe is really what God is, or similar to God in the same way. Yeah. Okay. Deleuze argues that substance only finds its existence in each of the attributes in which express it, and he is therefore utterly opposed to the idea of transcendence in Spinoza's philosophy. He focuses entirely on immanence. He holds that what is expressed has no existence outside its expressions. Each expression is the existence of what is expressed. Tripathi, on the other hand, argues that substance transcends the attributes. Substance is, of course, immanent in the attributes, but it is nevertheless not limited by them. So while Deleuze sees the expression of substance in attributes as constituting the essence of substance as in a real sense, Tripathi argues that we should understand the nature of attributes only through the notion of absolute, infinite, indeterminate substance, interpreting the idea that the essence of substance is manifest in the attributes as merely ascriptive rather than actual. For Tripathi, ascriptions are not existences. That is, we might ascribe attributes to substance, but we are not thereby claiming that the substance is the attributes. In other words, existence is only one, but it is differently perceived. Okay, so that's a bit of a mouthful, but it's just reiterating the same point as above, I think. Since substance is absolutely indeterminate, we can only ascribe attributes to it. We cannot find the attributes in it. Alright, so we have to so it looks like we're doing the work to differentiate the substance, the more fundamental thing, by giving it attributes. Okay. For Tripathi, that is. Hence, attributes are subjectively, so this is important. Attributes are subjectively superimposed onto an absolute indeterminate substance. This further reinforces the idea that attributes are and modes are of a different status than substance. Rather than understanding substance through its attributes, we must, according to the Vedantic view, deny that attributes have any kind of ontological status other than that of substance. Substance and attributes are the same ontologically, but different epistemically. So, again, let's highlight this. Oopsie, wrong one. So here's sort of the thing. So because everything is ultimately a substance, it comes down to the same ontologically, but epistemically we are imposing the other ones on it. So it's part of how we understand the world. It's not how the world actually is. But of course, for Deleuze, that would not be the case. It would be probably the same ontologically as epistemically, because we understand things through their attributes, which is how we understand things, and they are the thing itself. That is, I don't know what those words mean. Ontologically means the substance, the object itself. Ontology is the study of what is and being. Epistemically is the study of knowledge and how we have knowledge of the world. So when you talk about things epistemically, it's inherently knowledge-based and usually relative to people. Ontology can be just a metaphysical theory that actually may not pertain to humans or human thought. So, like, that's why you can have a transcendental ontology, a transcendental way of being that we don't actually have some sort of a mental, some sort of knowledge of. Yeah, I know these are big words, but I mean they get used. If you're gonna look at philosophy, you're gonna see them a lot, so you'll run into them a bunch. That is, attributes are substance merely perceived from different and importantly inferior position. When Spinoza says that intellect attributes such and such a nature to substance, Tripathi takes him to mean that the attributes are what the intellect takes the substance's essence to be, but that the attributes are not in the being of substance. This is, like I just said, this is being of substance. This is what ontology is, what it is to be a thing. Attributes are superimposed, and so in Vedantic terms we can understand them as upadhis, and I apologize for my pronunciation of everything again. Limitations, qualifications of substance. Upadhis do not constitute the inner being of God in a particular way. They may at best indicate the existence of God, but do not enter into the constitution of God. Hence, Tripathi concludes that the idea of substance as indeterminate pure being requires that we view attributes only as ascriptions, not as constituting the real nature of substance or as having an ontological status of their own. This goes sharply against Deleuze's reading of Spinoza, which holds that in demonstrating that something is an attribute, we demonstrate a priori its existence, and which takes substance's involvement in and explication of attributes as evidence that attributes have some kind of reality. So, of course, this here is just to reiterate the point, is that the attributes are part of the being. The attributes have the reality. They are part of the ontology. In the Vedantic view, an infinity of attributes exists, all of which are themselves infinite. All attributes are by their nature infinite and supremely perfect in their kind. However, these attributes are only relatively rather than absolutely infinite because while attributes express the essence of substance, they are not, unlike substance, absolutely infinite themselves. Tripathi thinks that we could not treat attributes as absolutely infinite without dethroning substance itself and usurping its place. So while substance is constituted by an infinite number of expressive forms, thought and extinction are two examples, while others are beyond the reach of human intellect, it also exists prior to this production. As Tripathi puts it, the indeterminate cannot resist determination. In fact, it lends itself freely to be determined in infinite ways. Thus, we have an infinite number of determinations or attributes. That is, the absolutely infinite being infinite can produce infinite attributes. Nevertheless, each of these attributes is relatively infinite. Only substance is absolutely infinite. If substance is composed of an infinite number of determinate attributes, then when Spinoza says that the more reality or being a thing possesses, the more attributes belong to it, Tripathi interprets this as meaning that the more real something is, the more indeterminate it is. Attributes do not give reality to substance. Rather, Spinoza here means that we can tell that substance is ultimately real because of the infinite number of relatively infinite determinate attributes ascribable to it renders it ascribable to it, renders it utterly indescribable and indeterminate. As substance is, according to Tripathi's interpretation, transcendent as well as immanent, saying that the more attributes something has, the more real it is another way of saying that the more attributes it has, the closer it becomes to being indescribable and indeterminate, and hence the closer it comes to the transcendent real substance. However, this does not mean that attributes are somehow giving reality to the substance. Rather, the attributes superimposed on the substance are only subjective and hence illusory. That is, attributes do not have the absolute infinity of substance, and in fact we only perceive them as existing in the first place due to our own partial subjectivity. Alright, so that's kind of an interesting thought. The more we can say about something, the less we actually understand it. Yes, in under this theory, we are the attributes of God, as we are all ways we perceive the ultimate substance, which would be, I guess, divine. And so, but we would not actually be the substance of God. God would be the more fundamental thing. We're just ways of sort of like understanding stuff. And that's how we understand each other, is different ways of understanding little bits of the world. But the ultimate thing is separate. It's bigger. So yeah, so all these, what I was saying right before that was that the more we actually can say about the world, or the more we have to say about something, means the less we understand. It means we're talking more and more about it because there's more and more to it, and we understand less and less about it. So that's why we have to talk about it more, and we ascribe more attributes to it. So I guess that would make the thing more and more complex and complicated, closer to the real. All right. Continuing, here we can clearly see the role that Māyā plays in Tripathi's interpretation of Spinoza. Attributes, not to mention modes, are only ascriptions. We superimpose attributes onto substance and modes onto attributes due to our subjectivity. Neither attributes nor modes are really there. Rather, the more determinate something is, the farther we are from perceiving the way things really are. As attributes are more determinate than substance, which is completely indeterminate, and as modes are more determinate yet again, they can only be the consequence of our fallible partial subjectivity. Okay. Acosmism and unity. Another issue in Spinoza's view that leads to different and illustrative responses on the part of Deleuze and Tripathi is that of acosmism. That is, Spinoza asserts that substance is pure unity. However, in doing so, he has difficulty avoiding Hegel's charge of acosmism, which, in the words of G.H.R. Parkinson, has two elements, negative and positive. The negative element is the view that the world, the cosmos, does not exist. It is a mere phenomenon lacking in true reality. When Hegel speaks of the world, in this context he has in mind the totality of individual things. Spinoza's acosmism, seen from its negative side, is the denial of the real existence of individual things. Individuality, and indeed distinction of all kind, is obliterated. Everything is thrown in an abyss of annihilation. So if Spinoza is to hold that substance is pure unity, then some means must be found by which we can still have a world at all. Both Deleuze and Tripathi, however, have responses to Hegel's objection, though their replies take their theories in quite different directions that are reflective of their own concerns and presuppositions. Okay, so I guess the thing is, if everything is unity, then everything just gets sort of washed out. It gets very, it's all the same stuff, and so there's no more distinctions, and so everything's just sort of gone. It's just all the same, it's all one thing. But here's what Deleuze says. If we take Deleuze's view that substance is what is denoted by the attributes and what is manifested in them, then that the essence of substance is the sense of a substance's self-expression, which has no existence outside the attributes that express it. Then we can avoid the problem of acosmism. We can distinguish between the essence of substance and the attributes that express it if we discard the notion of a real being of sense, which is irreducible either to what the expression designates or to the form of expression itself. Sense, therefore, is an entity that is neither identical to what the proposition denotes, the real object or referent, or manifests, the speaking subject, or signifies other propositions or concepts, but is in addition to these forms a wholly other entity that can be said to inhere in the proposition. What? So there's some sort of unity that isn't, So I guess this is like a reflective thing. The sense of an object then would be, given all the immanent properties and attributes and modes of the thing, then the sense of it, I guess, is this sort of the form of the expression itself. It's like the whole thing itself taken together, all of that stuff reflectively, I guess. And that would be the immanent sense. Okay, continuing. According to Deleuze, the expressed sense engenders the other dimensions of the proposition: signification, manifestation, and denotation. Hence, substance self-expression in the attributes, the sense of the substance's self-expression, is its essence. And this essence inheres or subsists in the attributes in the same way that sense inheres or subsists in a proposition. But sense is reducible to attributes or substance. It is an entity, but it has no independent reality. As such, sense is not something we have to explain as problematic for the unity of substance. Through the substance's self-expression as sense essence, which inheres in attributes, we are not required to conclude that the existence of attributes is a threat to substance's unity. The relationship between attributes and substance approaches a kind of mutual dependence of cause and effect, which makes distinguishing between the two, saying that one causes the other and that their creation undoes unity, a mistake. In short, a substance self-expresses in attributes, and the essence of substance is the sense of this self-expression. So yeah, this is the reflective bit I was mentioning above. This seems to be the crux of the matter. So we've got self-expressed in attributes, and then we've got the sense of this self-expression. So this is kind of, we've got going both ways here. So the substance expresses itself, and then the sense of how it does that is back reflecting from the attributes to the substance. This sense, and therefore the essence of substance, inheres in the attributes. However, because the sense of the self-expression only exists insofar as it is expressed in the attributes, it does not undermine the unity of substance. The essence of substance inheres in the attributes, and the attributes express substance, but we cannot privilege one or the other, saying that substance has caused attributes or that attributes create substance. The attributes express the essence of substance through the sense of substance's self-expression that inheres in them, and substance, because the sense of self-expression has no reality aside from the form of the expression, is expressed without a loss of unity. This is a bit of a mess, I think, in my opinion. I mean, you're saying basically it's reflective on itself, and therefore both sides hold the unity together, and they don't destroy. You know, it's one of those, well, it's like the checks and balances. This thing holds up this side and that part holds up this side. They sort of work together to make the whole object. That, or it's a mutual legitimation scheme where basically it's a house of cards holding itself up. It's like, well, which is it? Is it holding itself up legitimately? Is it a virtuous circle, or is it a vicious circle? I'm not like this sort of argument does not. Of course, this is just a comment on what Deleuze said about this sort of thing, and I don't know if there's like a fair or complete description of it, but you know, it's just sort of, just because it's self-reflexive doesn't make it good. It could make it bad too. Okay, continuing. Once again, this response illustrates Deleuze's concern with becoming and expression. Attributes contain the sense, the essence of substance, but with substance can only be said to have this essence insofar as it is being expressed in an attribute. We cannot say that attributes exist on their own as static entities, nor can we say that substance exists before and separate from attributes. Rather, substance exists as it becomes attributes, and attributes exist as substance is expressed within them. Yeah, see, it's kind of a matter of perspective. It's sort of what people like to say is it's this becoming right here. So as one becomes, like as the substance become attributes, and then you switch around the perspective, the attributes exist as substance, as part of the expression. That was what the substance did by existing. It became attributes, it expressed them. So yeah. Tripothy. Deleuze's approach responds to Hegel's charge of acosmism by putting substance and attributes on equal footing. This, for Tripothy's Vedantic interpretation of Spinoza, is completely unacceptable, as it rejects the transcendence of substance. Yeah, I always wish there were more pictures in philosophy. That is one of my complaints too. How then, according to Tripothy, can we explain the cosmos, the world of change, if we are to maintain that substance is pure unity? This is This is of special concern in the case of Tripathi's view, as it seems that we cannot say that the indeterminate substance and the determinate, the modes, the phenomenal world, are related, as Tripathi points out. If determinate and indeterminate are conceived as necessarily related, they cannot be distinguished. A reciprocal relation between the determinate and indeterminate is impossible, since the two cannot be had simultaneously. The one excludes the other. So it is completely opposite from Deleuze right here. So you can see so clearly that Tripathi is rejecting the other view, the reciprocal relation. This is kind of my concern. I'm not taking Tripathi's view that, because I'm not just going to take the transcendental view that substance has to be fundamental. I'm just saying that it's easily criticizable, and so because I'm not saying you can't defend it, but I'm just saying it's a very what was given above was not a sufficient argument to be had for that sort of thing. Because, I mean, you say something just like Tripathi says here. A reciprocal relation between this and this is impossible, because you can say, look, they exclude each other. Well, I did say it couldn't be both, but, it could be both. You just have to say something else. You'd have to somehow add it up in a different way. But, like, I mentioned it because I didn't know we were coming this way, and this is basically, I think it's an important counter-argument. Nevertheless, Tripathi claims that the Vedantic reading of Spinoza does not fall into the difficulty of acosmism, or rather, it does not see it as a problem to begin with. Yeah, and see, this is the other side I was going to get here too. So, the reason for this is that Tripathi's approach privileges absolute substance and dismisses what is merely relative. This conception sees Hegel's acosmic criticism as proceeding from a mistaken basis. This is actually what you were saying, that we were all attributes of God up here. See, Tripathi doesn't care. He's like, oh yeah, sure, that's fine. But then we're all just sort of parts of God, and we don't really exist. But Tripathi's probably okay with that. So this has its own problems too. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny the existence of yourself. I mean, you can just go read some Descartes. Hegel is okay. This conception sees Hegel's acosmism criticism as proceeding from a mistaken basis. Hegel is uncritically taking for granted the reality of appearance and then trying to find a place in the bosom of the absolute. But the Advaitins point out that if the world of plurality cannot be consistently harmonized with the concept of the absolute, it should be relegated to illusion. The theory of Vedānta, unreal manifestation, which is intended to explain change and multiplicity, really means that there is no creation and no dissolution. The perception of change is illusory. Thus, in a very real sense, the concept of absolute is both the end and the beginning of all philosophy. From the perspective of a Vedantic reading of Spinoza, we should not be overly concerned with how we can derive the conditioned and determinate from the unconditioned and indeterminate. On the contrary, Tripathi is not sure why we should ask Spinoza's philosophical system to do such a thing to begin with. It is simply not of interest. A critic might point out, however, that if substance is ultimately real and unchanging, so that change in the phenomenal world and the phenomenal world itself are illusory, then there does not seem to be any good reason for Spinoza to bring up the doctrine of attributes in the first place. But Spinoza does discuss the doctrine of the attributes, and he goes on to discuss the phenomenal world in terms of modes. He does not simply dismiss the phenomenal world as unreal. He discusses how to explain and understand it based on his theory of immanent single substance. How do we explain Spinoza's concern with attributes and modes if we ought to read Spinoza as saying that both are fundamentally unreal? Tripathi's response to this is that, though in a technical sense the Vedantic interpretation of Spinoza does lead to acosmism, and that the phenomenal world is seen as unreal, this is of no concern. Acosmism is only a problem if it means that we should not discuss the existence of the cosmos. The issue of acosmism is not whether or not the cosmos really exists, but whether or not we need to discuss the apparently real phenomenal world, or whether such discussions are beside the point. Tripathi argues that though the cosmos is unreal, it is nevertheless essential to discuss the phenomenal world, and hence the Vedantic interpretation of Spinoza does not lead us to a situation whereby we ignore the phenomenal world entirely and debate the absolute only. I wonder why. Why shouldn't we? Why should we? Why shouldn't we ignore the phenomenal world if it is completely unreal? I don't know. If the Vedantic reading bites the bullet, however, and accepts the unreality of the phenomenal world, then how can it justify discussing the phenomenal world? Tripathi argues that we must do so because it is indispensable to show the dependence of the conditioned on the unconditioned. This is due to the general emphasis in Vedantic philosophy on the rejection of the unreal and the importance of perceiving the real, that is, substance, God, Brahman. Tripathi suggests that the a priori condition of knowledge are due to ignorance, and hence freedom from them is possible. It is possible, according to this view, for us to gain immediate knowledge of Brahman, to which Tripathi relates to Spinoza's scientia intuitive. Gnarly asks, because discussing what isn't real is as important, at least for creating contrast next to what is. Yeah, it seems to be what's going on here. Because we start off as limited things, we have to sort of maybe get past that and find out what could be known. Because the dependence of the world is itself is its illusoriness. I don't know if I've ever said that before. Unless the world is shown to be dependent, it cannot be rejected. Hence, it is necessary to engage in cosmology, even from with Vedanta's absolute framework, to illuminate us regarding the dependence of the physical world. For Vedantins, cosmology exists purely to fulfill this function. It is only ever symbolic. So long as the absoluteness of substance is not undermined, we are free to understand the world in a range of ways. This means that from a Vedantic perspective, a Spinozistic understanding of the dependence of the world and on the absolute is merely one of the ways we might understand this relationship. Yeah, illusoriness, but it's funny to see it written out like this. I don't know. Tripathi thinks there are some textual justifications for why we ought to read Spinoza in this way. First, Tripathi states that Spinoza's explicit assertion that time is merely an aid to our imagination means that change is not inherent in reality, as the idea of change without time is unthinkable. Hence, we have reason to think that the phenomenal world is unreal, as the phenomenal world is one of change. Secondly, Tripathi argues that Spinoza also suggests that attributes are products of the intellect, ascriptions rather than perceptions, as they contain an element of negation. That is, they are only relatively infinite. They can be said to be not this, not that, and since the intellect is always relational and necessarily involves an element of negation, it follows that, in Spinoza's words, the infinite understanding cannot of itself understand anything except that which is limited by something outside. Thus, we ought to conclude that attributes are products of the intellect and not real. However, this does not mean that it is the empirical mind of the individual that ascribes attributes to substance. If this were the case, Tripathi thinks that we would be conscious of doing the ascribing, and hence it should be simple for us to perceive substance as being free from ascriptions. Clearly, this is not the case. We can only perceive substance as either thought or extension, and comprehending substance as being neither thinking nor extended is impossible for the empirical world. Hence, attributes should be considered a priori forms of the understanding. Attributes are not of the empirical order of subjectivity, but of the transcendental order. They are really of a transcendental origin, which is ignorance. With this in mind, Tripathi connects Spinoza's doctrine of the attributes directly to Vedanta's doctrine of the Māyā, that is, cosmic nescience. Not even sure about this word either. Nescience. According to the doctrine of Māyā, Brahman causes the world, but he does not do so as the absolute, but as Isvara, which is Brahman modified by Upadhi, limitation. The Upadhi of Isvara is Māyā, and through being qualified or limited by Māyā, Brahman is creative and self-differentiating. So it is not Brahman substance God, which is self-differentiating, but rather the penultimate reality of Isvara, substance qualified by illusion, that is self-differentiating. Hence, there is no need to harmonize identity with difference in substance, because it is only the penultimate reality of Isvara that both identity and difference exist. In the ultimate reality of Brahman, we have only identity. In Tripathi's words, The attributes may best be understood as upadhis of substance. An upadhi does not add anything to substance, it only limits it or determines it in a particular way. The first upadhi of Brahman is Māyā, which gives rise to all other upadhis, such as those of nama and rupa, name and form. Hence, Māyā is the karana upadhi, limitation giving rise to cause, and everything else is karya upadhi, limitation giving rise to effect. The attributes of Spinoza correspond to karana upadhi, while the modes may be called karya upadhi. Thought may be said to correspond to nama and extinction to rupa. This is not to say that Māyā has its own existence. Māyā is merely an epistemic principle and is destroyed without residue by knowledge. That is, consists only in a particular form of ignorance and is not a positive entity itself. The Kabbalah, I don't know all about. I should know some more about Kabbalah. I don't, but yeah, these thing. I mean, this tradition has a grand like tree of how the universe branches out from like the ultimate Brahman substance. Alright, so it's not a positive entity itself. Similarly, Svara should not be considered a separate entity. It is importantly, therefore, to distinguish between substance in itself and substance associated with attributes. Brahman is the former and Svara the latter. Tripathi relates the idea of Svara to Spinoza's Natura Naturans, arguing that Natura Naturans may be said to mark the distinction between the absolute itself, and the absolute considered as a free cause. Though Spinoza never explicitly discusses a concept such as Māyā, Tripathi insists that this idea is consistent with his view. Substance is qualified by transcendental illusion, which gives rise to the perception of attributes ascribed by us to substance. We cannot see substance as being anything other than composed of attributes, particularly the two we are familiar with, thought and extinction, because the illusion giving rise to their unreal existence does not occur on the empirical level, but rather the transcendental. It therefore cannot be thought to be the same kind of mistake as taking a rope to be a snake, which is an error that can be corrected by our understanding. So this is some sort of cosmic misunderstanding that has happened in the universe, and we're sort of glomming onto that, I guess. But it's not real. It's still a cosmic illusion, even though it's not an illusion of our understanding. I mean, that's getting kind of messy, because that's a metaphysical mistake that somehow existed in the universe. Alright, getting there. Attributes and parallelism. The final feature of Spinoza... what do you say? In my opinion, God and the transcendental cosmos can't be contained in thought and extinction. Yeah, I mean, that's the Tripathi's position here, not Deleuze's, though. So... this is sort of the argument in this paper, is between the immanent understanding that Deleuze has of Spinoza, and that's how you sort of understand how Deleuze is reasoning about this, and then Tripathi's, which is that you can't contain it in thought and extinction, and those are somehow fundamental but not ultimately real. The final feature of Spinoza I will discuss is that of parallelism of the attributes. Parallelism is the explanation in Spinoza's thought for the fact that while things which have different attributes as well as those which belong to different attributes have nothing in common with one another, there is nevertheless a relation between the modes and different modes of different attributes. This is not a causal relationship, but rather things in different attributes bear to each other a constant relation, even though there is nothing in the mode belonging to one attribute that is present in the mode belonging to the other attribute. So there is no real causality between modes of different attributes, yet there is somehow a relationship of correspondence between them. As James Martineau points out, close correspondency between two independent series without causality is an unsolved mystery. That is, it is hard to see what the relationship is between the two attributes that we are aware of, thought and extinction, if they have nothing in common, as everything that is extended is also represented in the attribute of thought, and vice versa. How is it that an occurrence in one attribute can be simultaneously represented in the other, when both attributes are unrelated and there can be no causal connection between the two? After all, Spinoza does state that neither can body determine mind to think, nor mind determine body to motion or rest or anything else, if anything there is, indicating that there is no causal relationship between thought and extinction, and that they should be considered as entirely separate. Furthermore, it is not just thought and extinction that have this status. There are, after all, an infinity of attributes. Therefore, all attributes are without intercommunication, each producing its own infinity of modes in order and connection, keeping time with the others, but in no contact below the point of origin. So if each mode belonging to each attribute has in it nothing of another thing, and therefore cannot be the cause of the existence of that other thing, meaning that finite modes can only be in causal relation with the other finite modes of the same attribute, then how do we explain the close correspondence between modes of different attributes? Okay, that was a mouthful, but it's basically saying this is the mind-body problem, I guess you could say. How do you have like thought and extinction? How does the different kinds of attributes work together when they are only in parallel? They do not actually touch. Okay. On the parallel conversations point, this is one of the reasons why comparative philosophy is so interesting, is that you hear completely different points of view, but then a lot of times the discussions get very similar in certain areas, but because they're from completely different cultures, times, and places, they have interesting things to say on the exact same question you were working on, but from a completely different point of view that you never would have thought of yourself. So it's always good to have I have a small soft spot for the comparative philosophy. I just find it you get different arguments on a lot of the same things you were going to be talking about anyway, but then you get a completely new viewpoint on that. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's usually kind of interesting. Okay, so how does Deleuze deal with this sort of parallelism problem? We can begin Deleuze's explanation of the fact that modes of different attributes parallel each other in terms of the idea of an identity of order between attributes. What this means is that God produces things concurrently in all of the attributes, and in doing so ensures that all of the attributes express themselves in one and the same order, down to the level of finite modes. Between the infinity of attributes, there is an identity in terms of the order of production, and this identity means that even though attributes are mutually irreducible and really distinct, and despite the fact that none is the cause of another or of anything whatever in another, it is nonetheless the case that the identity of order in production makes sure that modes and different attributes correspond in a parallel series. According to Spinoza, whether we conceive of nature under the attribute of extinction or under the attribute of thought, or under any other attribute, we should find one and the same order, or one and the same connection of causes, that is, the same things follow one another. Put in terms of the two familiar attributes, Michael de la Rocca explains it as follows. There is a causal chain of modes of extinction for any extended being extended thing X, which is caused by another extended thing Y. There is an idea of X that is about or represents X. This idea is caused by the idea of Y, which in turn is caused by the idea of Y's cause, etc. Similar claims would hold for each extended thing, and thus there is a causal chain of ideas that is isomorphic with, that parallels, that has the same order and connection as the chain of extended things represented by these ideas. This is a funny kind of thought. It's like, well, look, there's lots of different things and they all run in parallel, but because they're all coming from God to begin with, the ultimate substance or whatever, they all act the exact same way, even though we see them as two different things. It's all like a similar chain, but they don't talk. The two parallel chains don't talk to each other, but for whatever reason, because they're a common cause, I guess, of the substance, it all comes out the exact same way. It does seem like a miraculous coincidence, though. If a mode of extinction has a certain effect and a certain degree of power, then the parallel mode in the attribute of thought also has the same effects and the same power. The same applies to the infinity of other attributes. So, for example, for each attribute there are parallel ideas that represent the modes of this attribute in the attribute of thought, and these ideas have relations that are isomorphic with the causal relations that obtain between the modes of the unfamiliar attribute. Yeah, so there's a very sort of strong, I guess you might say, logical principle over here with the there's some sort of strong structural isomorphism between all the attributes. And like, I guess that might be some sort of underlying logic that keeps them all in lockstep, even though they're not corresponding with each other, but because they sort of started the same way, they sort of have the same logical progression, you might think. Okay. This correspondence rests on the equality of attributes. That is, there is not just an identity of order, isomorphism, but there is also an identity of connection between the two series. Yeah, so this is sort of like how these things entail from each other. That's what I'm saying. That is to say, both thought and extension have an equality of principle, so that there is an equal valence between what occurs in one and in the other. If the attributes were not equal and one was in some way eminent in relation to that of the other, then there would be an identity of order, but not an identity of connection. So Deleuze claims that when Spinoza asserts that modes of different attributes have not only the same order, but also the same connection or concatenation, he means that the principles on which they depend are themselves equal. Here we can see Deleuze's metaphysics once again. Deleuze's solution to the parallelism of the attributes places the emphasis not on the static nature of the substance as absolute, as the Vedantic interpretation does, but rather on the process of causation. Each attribute is a causal chain, and it is the becoming of the attributes that warrants our attention. Yeah, so, alright. Like I said, if you have other questions, let me know, but I'm getting to the end here, so... Yeah, see, conclusions down here. So try to get through this quickly. Tripathi. The Vedantic explanation of this difficulty stems from the now familiar idea that both attributes and the modes are illusory, products of our ignorance. As we ascribe attributes to substance, we also conceive modes through one attribute or the other. So when we perceive a thing, the issue is not whether it belongs to one attribute or another, ontologically speaking, but which attribute we happen to be conceiving it through. Saying that it belongs to thought or extension is providing two different descriptions, but there is only one thing being described. In the words of Gillian Howie, an individual is one thing and two descriptions in the attribute of thought and the attribute of extension. I'm finding both, like, this one requires a very strong logic that keeps everything lockstep. And this one, it's still some sort of miraculous way. Just why is it that, it's like, so there's some sort of fundamental thing within the substance that keeps, and so that forces the way we make an attribution of it, have it the same sort of causal process. But why should our different attributes we're ascribing to the thing, why should they always line up? Why should we perceive them so differently and then have them always follow the same sort of logic, though? I'm not sure. Alright. This subjective view of the attributes means that we have little difficulty in explaining parallelism between attributes. Parallelism does not exist any more than the attributes do. Yes, it is just denying that there's any difference again. Things exist in all of the attributes simultaneously, and whether we end up saying that it is in one or the other is purely a matter of description. Yeah, but why is it that the causal structure is also a matter of just a purely matter of description then? Or it's not purely a matter of description. Why is that hold fixed? Things are parallel then in the sense that the attributes are merely a means through which we can conceive substance, and so modes do not have a real existence in various attributes or aside from substance, but are rather substance covered by Māyā, perceived through one or the other of the infinite numbers of attributes that we could ascribe to substance. In other words, all parallels meet at infinity. Yeah, I guess so. But again, this is sort of like a logical principle. This is sort of an infinity is like this sort of the geometric proof of where the parallels meet. So again, it's some sort of strong logic holding everything together here. But I'm not exactly sure what that is. Alright, conclusion. We have looked here at three aspects of Spinoza's metaphysics through the eyes of Deleuze. Well, okay, that's cool. I'll upload everything to YouTube if you're super interested. So it'll be there. It'll be up in a few days, probably. We have looked here at three aspects of Spinoza's metaphysics through the eyes of Deleuze and Tripathi, the relationship between attributes and substance. Yeah, have a good night anyway. Thanks for stopping by. The relationship, The relation between attributes and substance, the problem of acosmism, and the issue of parallelism. Both thinkers have distinct views on these three topics, and in both cases, their understanding of these issues illuminates as much about the concerns that structure their own philosophies as it does about Spinoza's own views. Deleuze, for his part, insists on substance being immanent with no transcendence whatsoever. Substance expresses itself in the attributes, which in turn express themselves in modes, and in each stage expression involves and implicates what is expressing in what is expressed. Substance self-expresses, and the sense of such self-expression is substance's essence, which inheres in the attributes. There is, furthermore, an identity of order and connection between modes and parallel attributes. Each of these solutions emphasizes the process of becoming. Substance only exists in its expression as attributes, and attributes only exist as they express themselves, as they become modes. The essence of substance is in its becoming. It does not exist above and beyond its process of expression. Similarly, the identity of order and connection between attributes emphasizes the processual nature of substance's expression as attribute. According to Tripathi's Vedantic interpretation of Spinoza, on the other hand, substance is both immanent and transcendent. Substance is considered absolute and is of higher status than attributes and modes. In fact, according to this reading, we only ascribe attributes to substance. We do not find them in substance. Attributes and modes are illusory. Only substance is real. Attributes are superimposed on substance. They are upadhis of substance. The Vedantic reading, therefore, and unsurprisingly, foregrounds the relevance of the concept of Māyā, the principle of illusion that has us see substance as creative of the universe. Due to the existence of Māyā, parallel modes and different attributes meet in the infinity of substance, but are unreal aside from this. Hence, they are only different insofar as we ascribe a certain attribute to substance and conceive them through this attribute. To conclude, Spinoza's philosophy, like other rich philosophical views, can sustain multiple contradictory readings. As illustrated by Deleuze and Tripathi, these contradictory readings are, however, just as illuminative of the broader views of Spinoza's interpreters as they are of Spinoza himself. By looking at Deleuze's account of Spinoza, we can appreciate further the developments of his own metaphysical views. Similarly, we can gain insights into the central concerns and concepts in Vedantic philosophy through a consideration of Tripathi's interpretation of Spinoza. Okay, that was fun. Get to read stuff I'm not gonna read, would not have heard otherwise. This was nicely, this was written pretty nicely. We went back and forth between different views discussing Spinoza, and that sort of gave a nice way to compare contrast the two different sort of commentators, Deleuze and Tripathi, and show how their sort of views differ when it comes to this sort of metaphysical position. Because, you can talk about, immanence and transcendence, but you have to sort of have something nice to bite into to talk about. And this paper did that. It gave us the three sort of topics: the Acosmism, the Parallelism, and attributes that gave us some nice, good examples for how this, how everything, shook out in their different sort of systems. I don't have a ton more to say, because, this is sort of outlining the comparing and contrasting systems. The arguments, didn't see, there weren't, massive arguments saying, this is right or this is wrong. It's just, this is how it is along these guys, or I don't know if Tripathi's a guy, these folks, So, yeah, that's it for now. If anyone has any questions, please let me know in the next minute or so. Otherwise, that will be it for this paper. Don't think I'm going to do another one yet. So, thank you, and I will see you soon. I'll probably do some more tomorrow. Hey, what's up? I'm Gnarly. I was just finishing up. If you have anything you want to ask, now's your time, or else I'm going to cut out. Probably not going to do another one right now. I'm a little bit tired, but I may stick around for a bit.